Okay, so hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm seeing some familiar faces in the audience. But for those of you that I've yet to meet, my name is Paul Casada. I'm an instructional designer here at CSU Long Beach. And with me in this meeting are numerous of my ATS colleagues. Um, and we're also joined, or today, we're here with representatives from Turnitin, one of our academic integrity partners. They are Leanne MacArthur and Courtney Nicolaides. And they're here to demonstrate how the Turnitin service available within our Canvas environment, has implemented an AI indicator to help identify original work and that of text transformers such as ChatGPT and similar tools. And in the news just yesterday, President Biden signed an executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence, which aims to develop new standards for AI safety and security and to stand up for consumers, patients, and students alike. So for me, this just speaks to the importance and the prominence of AI detection tools that'll be developed in the future, such as AI indicator developed by Turnitin. So for those of you faculty who are requiring lengthy research assignments, you're likely familiar with Turnitin's plagiarism service, which generates an originality score in what is called a Similarity Report. When enabled for your assignments, pictured here is where you'll access the Similarity Report via the Canvas gradebook view or the speed grader view. And in this example, I copy and pasted text from Wikipedia's daily featured article, which explains the 100% score. So we know it's working. And for more detailed information of this report, you want to select the generated percentage score, which then opens the studio feedback or the feedback studio.
You can't see it?
Within the feedback studio, with the feedback studio, you'll find the overall similarity report, providing information on those match groups and their sources on a separate tab. And for those with high scores, we suggest that you review all the available information, and based on this report, that you provide detailed feedback or have a conversation with that student to discuss the weaknesses in their paper. You want to think about creating a learning opportunity for the student to better understand the importance of using proper citation and quotes for submitted assignments. And to help supplement this existing similarity report service, Turnitin has developed and deployed a new AI indicator tool, which they'll speak about at length in a moment. And Turnitin's new AI indicator tool is available within the same Feedback Studio view, where you can access this service by selecting the AI writing tool or option available along the top of the student's work. But first, just to help set the stage for today's presentation, and this being Halloween, I want to play a game, but one where no one gets hurt, at least not physically. Okay. And with the help of Zoom polling together, I want us to play a game of AI or human. And I think this is a fun and easy game to play. And here are the instructions. So I'm going to screen share in a moment. And in a round of 10 questions, you're each tasked with identifying whether the image or the text that you're looking at is original human work or that of AI generated content. You'll have about 20 seconds per round. And once you've made a decision, you'll enter this answer into the corresponding question in the Zoom poll. And that's something I'm going to launch in a moment. And given that I have real-time access to your selections, I'll be entering the answer based off of the popular vote. So that's the game, and I'm going to switch over now to my web browser to help play this game. Okay, so again, on this website, AI or Human, I'm going to start the game, and I'm going to launch the poll first. So I'm going to go to polls and launch. Okay, so you should see this poll is live now. Again, I have real-time data for your options, so no one should be entering anything just yet. I'm going to start the game, and as we move through each question, or through the 10 rounds, you'll designate whether you think it's AI or human, and then based off the popular answer, I'll then vote. So again, you have about 15 seconds per round, so I'm going to start the game. And before I start, actually, are there any questions? Any clarification? What we're doing? Okay, I'm seeing some votes already, but that no one should be voting just yet. But I'm going to start the game. Okay, I don't think there's any questions. So let's start. So start the game. And again, for question one, do you think this is AI or human? Okay, I'm seeing we're above 90% for this one. Oh, we're about halfway.
Looks like everybody's answered number one.
Everybody
The
answered? Okay,
majority is AI.
AI, that's right. So I'm going to select AI. Thank you, Sabrina. All right, let's move on to question two. Same thing, AI or human? And I'm not sure there's
Yeah, I'm not seeing any new answers, so I'm
me
wondering
neither.
if everybody clicked submit by
Oh,
accident.
perhaps that might have been a submit. That's right. Maybe let's relaunch. Let's just do these all at once. So maybe without clicking submit, I'm going to relaunch this poll. So sorry, I'm going to do that one more time. Relaunch. Okay. So without clicking submit, yeah, we're going to move through each question and we can just start at question number two. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to have the input without it being submitted. That's perhaps a limitation of this game. And I'm only seeing one response so far. Are you saying the same thing, Sabrina, for question two?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think this is a limitation of the poll.
Okay. So each should have been a standalone question. Okay. Well, I'm going to
Maybe
play
we
the game.
can switch to chat and folks
Oh,
can.
let's do that. Let's make it chat. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Sabrina. So everyone, yeah, just a switch up in the instructions here. So we're going to stay on question two, and then in the chat, just enter in AI or human. Okay, thank you. There we go. Seeing some input.
Seeing
Okay,
a
I think we're
lot of
going with
human.
human. Yeah,
Mhm.
let's go with human. Okay, question three, same thing. It seems a little more even split, but more human than AI, so I'm going to go with human. And this is now switching over to text, and this is more appropriate for today's tool, the AI indicator tool, which is focused more on text. So take a few seconds here, look at this text. Okay, seeing a lot more AI. Okay, I'm going to go with AI. Okay, on to question six. Again, it's a different set of text. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, for distinguishing the questions. Okay, what do you say, Sabrina? More AI or human for this one?
That one looks pretty evenly split, but thinking human.
Human. Okay, I'm seeing more human. Okay, and sorry, now we're on question six, and yeah, back to images. AI, pretty, yeah. Okay, that's gonna take it. Okay, seven. Let's start with seven now. AI or human? Okay. Oh, AI. Okay, I'm gonna go with human. Okay, question eight. Few pores. Yeah, I agree. This is some AI stuff. Okay, I'm going to select AI and question number 9. Now we're back to text. Oh, sorry, I switched to something here. Go back to question 9. Okay, and yeah, seeing a lot more AI. So select AI. And then last question, we're ending with an image, AI or human. Cyborg. Okay, I think human's going to take this one. So I'm going to vote human here for this last question. And so here are our results. So this is something I wanted to review together too. We had 1 out of 10 correct. So um, it's really difficult. I think this is the point of the exercise. So this is why I wanted to play this game in particular, because we're now dealing with having to identify, or at least doing our best within our human abilities to determine what is AI or human or AI generated content. And I'm going to switch back to our slides here. Just want to have a moment to reflect on that activity and maybe have a couple discussion talking points here. So, okay. So I just, again, wanted to provide an opportunity to share any thoughts or reflections on, and you're free to share in the chat as well, but I'm wondering if anyone was surprised by the results, if anyone thought they saw any patterns with respect to what they were looking for, specifically with the text and AI too. I think there's certain elements that people are looking for, because something I think that's interesting here is especially with respect to scammers, they're deliberate about leaving in errors because it makes it more human. They know that people are looking. Otherwise, if there's no errors, I think it's too perfect or too perfect, and that's the giveaway that it's not natural or human made. And again, the point of playing this game serves as a primer. One, it's not only to have a little bit of fun, but it also helps to understand the difficult task of correctly distinguishing between human and AI generated content, a task that's only going to get harder as large language models are endlessly trained on a variety of data sources. This is making it virtually impossible for any human to reliably identify this content. And to this end, Turnitin is here to help accurately and consistently determine this kind of work with the support of their AI indicator. And as they review this tool, you want to consider the possibility of false positives. You want to think about how it treats the written work of English language learners. And this is a known documented bias. And you're encouraged to think and ask questions about how the Turnitin AI indicator was developed and tested. And then lastly, before handing things over, as a reminder, because these detection and indicator services are not perfect, as educational leaders, you are not meant to use this information to accuse anyone of cheating. Instead, it's more productive to reframe this information and report as helping you to identify and engage with those students who are struggling with written work, and hopefully create the kind of interactive opportunity that helps keep students accountable for their learning in your classroom and the importance of being original in their work. So now I'm going to pass things over to Turnitin. So go ahead and take it away, Leanne. I'll stop sharing.
Wow, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Cal State University Long Beach, and thank you, Sivia, for making sure I was set up with everything that I needed, and thank you, Paul, for that awesome opener. I'm glad we didn't skip it. Today has been a tech nightmare for me personally, so I've been kind of on edge all day, and when Sivia said that there was the chance to have something fun happen, I thought, oh my God, please let's not pass up the fun, but that was actually quite thought-provoking. So I'm glad that that we did this event, and I'm going to go ahead and launch in. Our agenda for today, we're going to talk about the AI indicator roadmap, the minimum requirements, possible interactions with other tools, as well as recent AI indicator research that has been released, and there'll be supplemental materials to follow. We're going to make sure that you have a copy of the slide deck at the very end. There are always some hidden resource things that we include. This is not as beefy as some of the slide decks from several months ago where we had just tons and tons of overwhelming quantities of resources for folks. We tried to keep it a little bit lighter. My name is Leanne MacArthur. I'm the Customer Success Manager who works with the Cal State system, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Courtney Nicolaitis. Do you want to say hi, Courtney?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today.
She covers some of the other larger state systems within California, and our partner and friend Sydney McLean could not be with us today, but she also sends a greeting. I was originally going to devote a little bit of time to the Turnitin new Similarity Report, but Paul actually did a wonderful overview of it. And unless someone has like a burning question, I was going to jump from that content straight into talking about AI. Is there anyone who had any questions specifically about, is this the real Leanne or AI Leanne? I swear I'm a person. I am sorry I'm not on camera today, but it's been that kind of a tech day where I'm not sure I can trust the other computer. So anyways, does anyone have any specific questions about the new Similarity Report? This is how bad my tech day has gone. I don't have access to it right now. There's something wrong with my account. So all I have are some of the slide deck info pieces about it. And I'm going to trust if you guys had questions that they'd be in the chat already. Okay. All right. The long and short of that new view is that the upgrade was based on lots and lots of instructor feedback. I believe you guys have actually been test driving that for us, and a huge thank you because your feedback has been pivotal in refinements to that system. In terms of the AI indicator, I wanted to lead off with a little bit of statistical information. There are bunches of different studies out there, and I've tried to look for some of the more current ones that talk about student usage of AI indicators and AI writing tools. This particular survey included 600 diverse students from 43 US states. Over 40% were secondary school students, and over 40% were university students. And they were asked a bunch of questions about AI, writing in general, and the types of tools that they use. And they noted that when they use AI tools in academia, they're using, by far and away, most of it for writing assignments. Now, I'm really glad Paul paid special attention to talking about the nuance that is required for using these tools, because it would be easy from a stat like this to go, oh my gosh, that means they're cheating. And guess what? That's not what that means. What it actually means is that students are highly aware of all of the technological advancements that are around us today. And by far and away, the thing that they use the absolute most that now has AI embedded into it are grammar checkers, with citation generators being a number 2. AI text generation tools are part of this list. They do get used, but maybe not in the ways that we always assume. And so, for instance, this particular survey, they noted that students were using AI specifically because they were struggling to generate ideas, get started when they were trying to write a piece for school. And so that says something very interesting about the ways in which students are trying to use AI tools, as opposed to just automatically assuming the worst or believing that all of this stuff is going to be used to cheat. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually being used in more creative ways. As an example of this, my colleague Courtney, she traveled a couple weeks back to Georgia to do a day-long event with a school in Georgia, both students and instructors. And there was a student who shared, they asked the students, how many of you used something with AI today? And then they asked more information about what was it you used and why did you use it? And a student said, I used it just today to help me pick my clothes out. Now, you might think that that's totally trivial, but this was a student living in Georgia who had never, ever been in cold temperatures, and it was unseasonably freezing cold. And what they looked up was information on how to take the clothes that they had and layer them in such a way that they would look, quote unquote, fashionable when they went into their classroom. So it was a very interesting use case, but also not a totally trite one. There was another study that was done earlier this year. The Best Colleges survey polled 1,000 students, undergraduate and graduate students only, and 94% of the respondents were between the ages of 16 to 32. Those students, of those that were polled, 36% of them believe that ChatGPT results were better than what they could produce on their own. And that kind of is an interesting marking point to think about, well, geez, you know, what does that say for us? What does that say that the students actually might need in terms of assistance from educators and support from their educational staff and environments that they inhabit? In terms of the global AI usage, between April 4th and July 25th, there were 65 million papers processed with the AI indicator. Of those, 3.3% had more than 80% AI generated text. 10.3% had more than 20% AI generated text. And it's always important to remember that there are some instructors who are choosing to integrate the usage of tools like ChatGPT into the curriculum rather than mitigate. And so the presence of AI generated text is not necessarily something undesirable. It could have actually been within lesson parameters depending upon what was being done in the curriculum. Gosh, I hope you can't hear my chihuahua going ballistic out back there. The AI writing report, most of you I'm sure have seen this view. It was trained on long form English prose, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. We continue to have and update resources available in the interface, and there are also disclaimers that urge instructors to proceed with contextualization whenever they're reviewing the results coming from the AI indicator. Zoom seems to have a good Chihuahua blocker. Thank goodness. That is the only thing going right for me today. I love it. So there are some differences and some similarities between the similarity score and the AI writing indicator percentage. So the Turnitin similarity score is a percentage that represents the amount of a submitted paper's content that matches content within one of Turnitin's databases. And the databases, they compare against a proprietary web crawler, they compare against a repository, global repository of student papers where they've been allowed to be included, and as well as journals and other periodicals. So the score ties directly to text segments that are known to be human written text. Where the AI indicator vastly differs is that the percentage indicates the amount of qualifying text, meaning text that fits the base system requirements for the AI indicator, and we'll talk about that, that is within the submission that Turnitin's AI writing identification model determines was likely generated by AI. Now, our VP of AI, Eric Wang, likes to talk about the statistical footprint that exists with AI generated text, and that's actually what we're tracking and tuning to. And so if those of you who have used ChatGPT or have your students using ChatGPT, you probably already know that when a student crafts a prompt and then has an output that they receive, you're never going to be able to see what that is unless they actually do it in front of you and you can watch over their shoulder, or they share a link to that content to you directly so that you can see it. And so it's physically impossible for us to provide you with a one-to-one correlation the way that we can do with similarity detection, because we have a database to compare against. Instead, what we're doing is we're going with a statistical footprint, and we can tell you what we believe was likely generated by AI. Now, neither of these percentages should be used as a standalone data point, which Paul already said, in determining whether or not academic integrity has been compromised. Both of these percentages, both pieces of these data sets should be used to start conversations with students, and they should always be considered in the context of assignment specifics, course parameters, and your knowledge about the student. And I have a vignette I like to share about this that I think highlights why even the information in the similarity report is important to take very carefully and consider what you're reviewing. One version of our integrity product line includes document details, which can include things like whether or not there's a mix of UK and US spellings. UK spellings can be a marker for potentially a purchased paper from someplace outside of the US. When I was in my 40s and went back to school, one of my first papers that I submitted in a tech writing program, I was pulled aside and my instructor said, "Why are you using a mix of UK and US spellings?" And I laughed. And she said, "Oh, you think this is funny?" And all of a sudden I realized I was potentially in trouble for something that I didn't know I was doing. And I said, and then I had to tell her, I said, I grew up in a community in Alaska that had a lot of families who had immigrated there from British Petroleum. That came from the UK. My small rural school district made a decision that any child using UK or US spellings, if they were accurate, would never be graded wrong. And unknowingly, I had learned to use those spellings interchangeably. She started laughing once she heard the story. She's like, oh God, what are the chances of that? And then she told me that I had to choose one or the other. I couldn't use both as a tech writer. So that's an example of the kinds of things that you need to do, no matter where this information is coming from, whether it's the AI writing indicator or the similarity score or document metadata. You need to get a sense of your student and where they're coming from. And finally, the decisions that you make as educators and reviewers and academic integrity departments really determines the significance of these percentages, the context, and the next steps. And all of this information actually has formative usage as well. It could indicate that your students need more instruction, such as help with paraphrasing, developing a thesis, choosing valid sources, or more details about the drafting and revision process and how time-consuming that can actually be. So any questions at all before we jump into talking about the roadmap? We will actually go into Canvas in context and show paper examples with AI indicator percentages.
We do not have any questions at this time, Leanne.
Okay, thank you. So for the roadmap, everything that we have done so far has been based off of instructor and admin feedback. And you ask for it, and if enough of you ask for it, we try to do it. And so towards that end, more than once today, I'm likely to suggest, hey, if you've got an idea, please share your feedback, because you're helping to build the future of what these systems are going to look like. Administrators immediately wanted to have the ability to either enable or disable the AI indicator. And so we built that and implemented that first. This allowed people to have a sub-account level where they could turn on the AI indicator if they felt it was more appropriate for one department, but not another, for instance. Almost immediately, folks also began saying, hey, we need a way to download these reports. Can you give us that in a PDF form? We implemented that as well. And all along the way, we've been updating and fine-tuning our system to address false positives. Now, a question we get along these lines is, are we live training on papers as they are being submitted? No, we are not doing that. We do manual updates. We have to actually understand and know the source for papers that we are tuning against, and we take that very seriously. And we also are keeping track of the changes that OpenAI is making as they go, because their system is actually the base for a number of other things, including the AI engine that is now part of paid Quillbot. So next up will be a reference and citation validation tool. And we also have requests so that admins can have visibility into AI writing scores above the individual submission level for their institutions. Finally, we know that people want to be able to see the AI indicator percentage in the Canvas dashboard, just the way you do for the similarity reports. They want to be able to see that data more readily without having to click into it. That's going to require collaborative development work with Canvas, and we're somewhat beholden to their timeline. And so that will be a little bit longer ways off, but we know people want it, and we're very eager to provide that as well. We've also had lots of requests for the student-facing view. The admin stats dashboard and the student-facing view are two where we are still accepting feedback right now. If you have use case scenarios for how you would like to work with either that dashboard for admin stats or for working with the student-facing view of AI indication, please let us know so that we can build something that matches the workflows that are real for you, not our imagination of what might be useful for you. So in terms of updated resources, we recently released a white paper, and there's links to all of this stuff. We recently released a white paper that discusses more in depth our architecture model, how we tested, as well as efficacy. Amazon Web Services was impressed with the architecture that we employ that powers the AI indicator. And there is a video interview now with one of our engineers where they ask questions about the architecture underlying the system. I mentioned Eric Wang, our VP of AI. He did a podcast interview recently on believing the hope, not the hype of AI, which is very helpful in terms of talking more about the details of testing, how we have worked very hard to avoid bias. And our FAQ, I believe a number of you have seen. What you may not know is that thing changes every 2 to 3 weeks. And even I forget that I need to review it and see what has changed, but there's new content in there based on not just new questions, but changes to the system over time as we have found it important to make manual updates. I won't read about every single one of these, but I will say this. In response to the papers and assertions that there is no AI indicator that operates without bias against English language learners, we actually conducted a second round of testing using independently sourced papers. And we have that published up on our blog post now, which includes information about the papers, where they were sourced. It's a publicly available corpus that many other companies are able to work with as well. And I'll talk more about those details coming up. Any questions so far? Definitely need citation validation. Yeah, tell me about it. So I was generating essays yesterday with ChatGPT 4. I meant to tell you about this, Courtney, and this new thing started happening where I kept asking for it to write me an essay, and it would try to coach me on how to write the paper. And I literally had to rebuke it and say, I don't want your outline. Give me the essay. And I don't know if that's just the way mine has been trained over time, or if it's a new thing that OpenAI has done. But if any of you have run into the same, I would definitely love to know that. And it still can't give me valid citations. So in terms of the minimum requirements, there's a lot that hinges on this. It's important to know that there are minimum requirements first, because the AI indicator will perform better the more we test to those minimum requirements, and worse, or not at all, the farther away we get from them. So the file sizes you're running must be less than 100 megabytes. At a minimum, they need to be 300 words of prose text in a long form writing format. And what I will show you in Canvas is the impact non-long form writing formats have on the AI indicator. The files must not exceed 15,000 words. At this time, they do need to be in English. Eventually, we do hope to have something that is multilingual in scope, but right now, what we're focusing on is English. And the accepted file types are doc, PDF, text, and RTF. So what does this mean practically day to day for your assignments? What it means is that things like lists, the presence of numbered or bulleted lists, the AI indicator may decline to read those. It might just skip them outright. Now, what if you have an assignment like a short answer essay, for instance, where you've got students will put one and then whatever the essay question prompt was, and then they'll put a little text snippet, and then they'll do two, same thing. And what if none of those text segments actually amount to 300 words of long form English prose? The AI indicator might overlook text near numbers or bullets. And if individual answers are under 300 words, the AI indicator may not give you a percentage at all. It may say 0, or it may give nothing, period, because it's not actually meeting the threshold for those 300 words. Initially, we did not identify tables as capable of being a delivery method for long form English prose. We had some instructors who stated they had use case scenarios where, actually writing instructors, where it was the case. And I have an example live that I'll show today that shows you that yes, based upon that feedback, we now will process long form English prose within tables, provided the 300 word minimum is met. We had a weird situation that cropped up a couple of weeks ago. Some learning management systems have a text submission feature, which allows students to type in a paper that they want to submit. And if that tool is HTML based, it could possibly convert a document into HTML behind the scenes without students knowing about it. I don't think this is an issue for Canvas. Where we saw this was happening was Brightspace. And it's since been fixed by Brightspace, but the AI indicator can't read HTML. And so if something like that gets submitted and it's not actually in one of the document formats that we can read, it will either give you a 0 or no report at all. And finally, there are some cases we've seen where short documents with a very high percentage of profession or discipline specific jargon, and I'm thinking things like nursing, chemistry. The AI indicator might view that discipline-specific jargon as repetitive and possibly an indicator as one of those statistical footprints that might indicate AI was in use. So if you are a professor in one of those disciplines, I would be very careful, and I would actually review papers and see what you think. You may discover you don't want to use the AI indicator for specific assignments. You may decide you want to use it for others. And before we move on to talk about interactions with other tools, any questions yet?
Nope, not any questions yet.
Okay, so interactions with other tools. We've had lots of great questions about different types of tools that are out there. And one of those is Grammarly. Grammarly is quite popular with a lot of students. Many are using the free version. We first began receiving reports that students might be getting flagged for AI writing who were possibly using Grammarly some months back. And we struggled to be able to duplicate the effect that was happening. Sometimes we were able to duplicate it, but we couldn't do it reliably. And what we finally came to is that we believe the harder someone leans into the paid version of Grammarly, Grammarly Go, which now actually has a hardcore AI tool built into it, that could possibly trigger the AI writing indicator. Some of the papers that I'll show later today, it didn't. Now, can I guarantee that that's going to happen 100% of the time? No, this is one of those places where I would continue to ask your students, did you happen to use any other tools like Grammarly Go? We know that there are certain institutions who part of their policy is many schools we found at this point are allowing their instructors a great deal of academic freedom in terms of deciding whether or not they want to be able to integrate or mitigate usage of ChatGPT or other LLM tools with their assignments. In the cases where it's being allowed, there are some schools that have a provision that requires students to indicate every single AI tool that they used and prompts. And they include things like Grammarly in that because they know that it has that capacity to potentially show up as maybe having been AI generated when really it was a formative tool or an attempt at using a formative tool. We also get asked, what happens if you manipulate a text pretty heavily? Can Turnitin into text something if it was written by AI and then put through something like Quillbot? What's it going to do? And the more heavily manipulated a piece of text is, the farther and farther away you get from whatever the original output was, if it was generated by something like ChatGPT, the more and more difficult it becomes for us to have any certainty about the statistical footprint that we're looking for. And if we don't have a high enough level of certainty, we will decline to flag it. And we're totally okay with that. The reason we're okay with that is that we would rather err on the side of caution than falsely accuse people, because we know that that is not just much more dangerous for students, it's also somewhat demoralizing depending upon the skill of the writer as well. So we have some cases where we've taken AI writing, run it through Quillbot, every single paragraph, for instance, and in some cases, the AI indicator is able to pick it up. It does that much better today than it did 3 months ago, but that's only been as a result of specific manual updates. And what about Quillbot? So independent of this discussion about whether or not something can flag as AI, we began focusing on the work of OpenAI several years back, and we began working towards AI indication at that point in time. And right alongside with it, we were separately building a tool for paraphrase detection tools for something like Quillbot. I pick on Quillbot a lot only because it's good. It's a great paraphrase tool, and the free version allows students to run endless quantities of paragraphs at a time. It's time consuming, but you can literally put every single paragraph of an essay through it and get it reworded in such a way that it is not clunky in the way that previous generation paraphrase tools were. So we hope to have the paraphrase tool released later this year for beta, but more to come on that one. And before we talk about the research, any questions yet? Okay.
No, we
So-
don't have any questions, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned the white paper. I'm not going to read from any of these papers to you, but we provide links to all of them. And the white paper goes more into depth about the ways in which our AI indicator was trained, the model underneath it, testing and efficacy. And one of the things that it points to is the preprint that is shown on the middle of the page. This year, I have spent a great deal of time reading research articles and preprints, whether I wanted to or not. And to date, I am current on every single paper or preprint that has been released talking about AI efficacy, unless it has been published in the last 48 hours. And that's how current I am. The thing that I noticed with all of them is that many of those who were doing the research work did not actually observe the system requirements for the tools they were testing. And I don't mean just Turnitins. There's research out there that did not include the Turnitin AI indicator at all. However, they still weren't looking at the system requirements and then testing and getting results that were, certainly less than desirable. And unless you're actually looking at the system requirements for something, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into in terms of results. One of the very early articles I remember reading, there was a professor who had said, I had my students generate resumes with ChatGPT, and then we put them into the Turnitin AI indicator, and it couldn't give us any results. That's right. That's not long form English prose. So it doesn't meet a base requirement, and we aren't going to be able to read it. And we know that. What is different about this particular preprint by Weber, Wolf et al. Is that of the 14 tools they tested, they observed the system requirements for every single one of the tools. And they also took great pains to make sure that they were testing to those system requirements. And the results they got were very different. Turnitin yielded 0% false positives based upon their work. Now, we don't claim those as our results because we know that 0% false positives is actually not feasible over the long haul, given the nature of AI large language models. What we do think is doable and we are holding to is less than 1% false positives over time. And that's what all of our fine tuning and our testing has been to. In terms of English language learners, we were concerned about the statements and research that stated that there was no AI indicator that could operate without bias against English language learners. We had already spent a great deal of time testing and training to make sure that we were not biased in that regard. But we went through a second round using this publicly available corpus of papers that I mentioned, and we were not able to come up with a statistically significant bias against English language learners. I believe what we came up with like 0.07%. I'm not saying that the less than 1% or the 0.07% don't matter. They do matter. But that's also why we encourage people to have conversations and to think carefully about the assignments that they're crafting and make sure that they're providing students with chances to perhaps use some of these things in a formative fashion. If you're using ChatGPT, if you're leaning into that in your curriculum, you actually want to see an AI percentage show up so that you know that your student did actually do the thing they said they were going to do. There's also some other ways that you can check that, of course, like asking them to link the prompt and the output to you so you can see the original they were working with, where the system will allow it. So we often have at least one person in a large group who is interested in the nuts and bolts of how the AI indicator works. And I can talk through this if you're interested in it. But if you're not, I'll move on and just know that you can read about this. The slide is actually going to include text that highlights some of these details, many of which come from our white paper. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. I'm assuming many of you have also seen this video by David Adamson, one of our machine learning scientists, where he talks about false positives. And rather than show it again, because I want to make sure that we do have some time for question and answer, the highlights from this one. Again, we built a do no harm system in. And so we don't equate false negatives with false positives. We believe the false positives are ever so much more potentially damaging, that we would rather be shy of those, and we're okay with missing some AI generated text. Whoops, sorry. So in terms of the context for Weber-Wolf, this is from page 21 of that preprint. And what I wanted to show was that we weren't the only tool that showed a 0% false positive rate once you started testing to our system requirements. And some people might be thinking, oh my gosh, why are you showing us your competition? That's stupid. Maybe, but I also think it says something very interesting about whether or not we're capable of doing AI indication, whether anyone is capable of doing it. Certainly, we would like to believe that as Turnitin, being broad and deep in academic writing for decades, that we're uniquely positioned to do what we do. But this also shows that it is possible. And towards this end, trying to maintain this less than 1% false positive rate, we're going to continue to do fine tunings and manually update the AI indicator as needed. This morning, I was in another session with a school system in New York, and I had a professor who said, I've actually had 3 papers where I literally sat and watched my students, and we revised things live in front of me, and the revision was the thing that actually showed up with potentially flagging AI as a false positive. If you have a case like that, we do want to know about it, and here's why. The combination of tools they might be using could have something with AI in it, and we want to actually fine tune our system so we don't have false positives when you're doing formative work with your students. The only way we get to do that is if someone will let us know, hey, I got this weird result. I think you need to, look at this with your testing. And we'll do it. And so he's going to get me some document IDs so that I can take that to our development team. That's how serious we take it. We want you to be thoughtful too, but we want to be thoughtful in our representation of the work that we're doing. So I mentioned earlier that it's not that these less than 1% rates don't matter. They do matter. But our value is that we value safety over absolute accuracy. What we discovered was that accuracy means different things. Where would we send those anomalies in? What I would recommend is you're welcome to send them to me directly, because what I'll do, turnitin.com. Okay, I'm putting my email into the chat. Hopefully did that go out to everyone? You can certainly submit it via a ticket. If you do that, please tell me the ticket number so that I can make sure it gets pulled aside. Otherwise, it will be processed like a support ticket when really you're reporting something you want us to actually fine tune and test against, not to error test. And they're 2 different things. So if you let me know, I can submit it for you. I'll probably need some baseline details. And my email, which you'll also see when you get a copy of the deck. Oh, thank you, Paul. He's putting it in the chat for everyone. Yeah, if you've got anomalies, we do want to see them, and we do want to actually fine tune our system. So when we talk about accuracy, we know that there are many ways to define this. And in some of the research that has been presented, equates false negatives as being just as damaging as false positives. We don't agree with that. Based on that absolutism, sure, you could make a statement that no AI indicator works at all because you're going to have false negatives. We don't see that as a flaw. We actually see that as a safety valve of protection. And there are other places in life where we do accept those kinds of rates of potential risk because they're meant to be combined with human evaluation. Colonoscopies have a false positive rate starting at roughly 9% for the youngest people they tend to be recommended for, and that false positive rate just climbs as we age. Pregnancy tests have a 0.7% false positive rate, and I don't know what the TSA pre-check and scan false positive rate is. All I know is I get pulled out of line regularly for pat downs, and not many other people around me. I mean, it's like clockwork. So I don't know what that's about, and I don't have stats on that. But there are places where we've decided that we're willing to actually work with false positives, knowing that we have to have humans in the loop to take care of things and actually have good oversight. So when we talk about the training, our AI indicator has been trained on both AI-generated text and authentic academic writing across geographies and subject areas. Because we are broad and deep in academic writing, because we focused only on academic writing, this has helped us to craft a robust tool that's built upon world-class architecture. Our VP of AI likes to joke, this is not built on duct tape and hope. And Amazon will back us up on that. Our AI indicator was stress tested on 800,000 papers composed before 2019. We are one of the very few organizations globally that can conduct a safety check at this scale. And along the way in our development, we did pay special attention to statistically underrepresented groups like second language learners, English writers from non-English speaking countries, students at colleges and universities with diverse populations, as well as underrepresented subject areas. And oh my gosh, I've got a spelling error for geology. I'm so sorry. We recently, because of the statements that were out in the public sphere along with research, seeming to support this idea that English language learners would always be unfairly evaluated by AI indicators, we took pains to do additional testing, which is outlined on our blog. And I believe the additional supplement of documents that we used, it was multiple different corpi that we were able to put together that are confirmed to have been written by English language learners of 2 confirmed skill levels, was over 9,000 papers. And the false positive rate was statistically insignificant compared to non-English language learning peers. So any questions before I show some papers live? Gosh, I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm not making good use of time here. I'm going to pause for just a second.
We don't have any questions, Leanne.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to jump into showing what it looks like when you have different types of papers that are run through the AI indicator. And because I know that there are at least a small number of you who are using the external tool version of Turnitin, I do have a couple of assignments that are built that way, but many of them are coming through Canvas plagiarism framework. So if my entry point into looking at these looks a little different to compared to what you usually use, just trust that it's all still Canvas. And so first, we're just going to look at the 100% AI drafted papers. Now, we've been asked over time, how are you doing with ChatGPT 4? What are your plans with ChatGPT 5? So the training on the base model that OpenAI developed, the underpinnings are still quite similar, although they do regular updates. And we are continuing to test and evaluate and do regular manual updates as well. And so we have parity with the results that we provide in AI detection between ChatGPT 3.5 and 4. When 5 comes out, we'll begin working on that as well. So this particular paper was 100% generated by ChatGPT. And as you can see, it's flagging the content of the paper. And we've also got resources that are here. The disclaimer, that's tiny print for my taste, but everywhere we've tried to put some sort of a warning or another that basically says, hey, this is not meant to be a blunt force trauma object. We do want you to actually thoughtfully review this, even if something says 100%. Please be careful with your reviews. And the second paper, now this was done with ChatGPT 4 with Bing enabled for live search. Oh no, I'm lagging. Okay. Yeah, this is my lovely tech nightmare of today, and now it's sort of like Hunger Games. The odds will ever be in my favor, right? We're going to see how many of these I can get through before it crashes entirely and just stops giving me results. So this is something that has been an issue specifically on our system today, but I think it affects our accounts differently than yours because our accounts tap into so many different integrations and accounts altogether. So Where it gets interesting is when we start to look at writing that is a combination of human and AI. And I mentioned before that we have a do no harm model. And so in this particular piece, these paragraphs in bold, this is my human writing that was added in. And you can see that understanding that there's a bit of a zone of transition, the AI indicator is not flagging every single thing that it possibly could. This one is even more interesting because I included several text segments, including more and more human writing mixed in. And again, in an abundance of caution, the AI indicator keeps assigning these zones of transition where it declines to flag AI content as AI because it knows somewhere that between here and here, there's a change. And rather than being overly aggressive, it's going to be much more cautious. And this next one should be more of the same. Now, what happens if you have a student who decided they wanted to take one sentence of human writing, one sentence of ChatGPT, one sentence of human, one sentence of ChatGPT? Chances are you're not going to get great results because the mixing of those kinds of that down to that level is going to disrupt the potential statistical footprint. And it may actually be that you want your student to engage with revisioning something that has been output by ChatGPT to that level. And so for your taste, you might want to see that there is some AI indicator flagging, just to know that it was actually done. Now, I mentioned before some of these other tools, and let's take a look at Grammarly. Now, this was the paid version of Grammarly, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed here that it doesn't crash on me. This is one of my own essays that I wrote that was from pre-2020, so no chance that it was ever done by AI or any AI related tools. And I ran all of this as heavy as I could through Grammarly Go. And our AI indicator says, nope, this wasn't generated by AI. Now, can it do that all the time? I'm actually not sure if I'm lagging again or not with this one.
There you go.
Okay. This one was also one that I wrote and then put through Grammarly Go and couldn't get a response out of it. Now this was drafted by ChatGPT and then entirely put through Grammarly Go. Oh, come on. All right, and I apologize. This normally on a good day, or actually even as recently as last night, this shows the current document that I'm on. But again, whatever reason, my account is having an issue. This correctly identifies it as 100% AI writing, even though I ran it through something else to try and revise it as heavily as I could. Make sure I don't have any hidden windows open. I do. That might be a piece of what's going on. Okay. And then Quillbot. Now this begins a series of different papers. This was 100% generated by ChatGPT 3.5. Every single paragraph was revised by Quillbot. And it catches that this is still AI. Can it do that 100% of the time? I don't think so. I don't think so. I would still be very careful. And again, I'm not sure if I'm lagging or not here. This one says all GPT and then put through Quillbot. If I'm not lagging and this result is accurate, then this is an example for you live that you can actually change the footprint. Now, this is a paper that was drafted using the Quillbot paid AI feature, which can research and write a paper. I may have written 2 sentences out of this, maybe. But the rest of it, all I had to do was click a lot of buttons and it generated the report for me. And this comes up as flagging for AI, which I believe it will, because the underpinning of Quillbot AI writing tool is actually the base for ChatGPT as well. So it has some similarity. Now, can we provide you with awesome guaranteed results of that all the time? No, because we aren't 100% testing and tuning to that particular tool. And that's really the thing that's going to make or break it at the end of the day, is where are we currently on our testing cycle? Some of these tools have the same statistical footprint underneath them because they are built upon or based upon the work that OpenAI did. Now, this is one that was human written, heavily edited with Grammarly Go. Then I paraphrased it and re-edited it with Quillbot, and then I used the Quillbot AI tool on top of it. And you can see it's not flagging at all. And finally, I like to end up with the document features because I think this is really important to see what can and cannot be read. And so first we're going to start with Wrapper's Delight, which is flagging for 99% similarity. I'm surprised it's not 100 because literally all I did was copy in the lyrics for Wrapper's Delight. But this is not long form English prose. And this is one of the ways that the AI indicator will tell you, hey, you're not meeting the base requirements for this, for what I can do. This was an attempt on my part to actually break the AI indicator, and it didn't work. So one of the things that we're great with is academic writing. And my prompt, I believe, I put this through ChatGPT. I wanted it to draft me a research article that had numbered headings because I thought, oh yeah, numbered headings, it will skip that. And then I asked it to give me text snippets that were less than 300 words per, thinking that I would never make the 300-word long-form English prose minimum. And that's not what happened. The AI indicator said, oh, I see where your long-form prose is, and I'm going to read all of that, but I am going to skip your headings. And so it correctly identified it as generated by ChatGPT. I mentioned that we can now read long-form English prose in table format, and that's what this is. This was completely drafted by ChatGPT. This is a format that some of our instructors use when they're having students do work on things like 5, 7, or 10 paragraph essays. They put it into a table format, and each paragraph is supposed to represent a certain function or component within the body of the essay. And in this case, although it chose to be a little conservative with specific things, and I'm not sure why, this was definitely generated by ChatGPT, and the fact that it caught 79% of it is showing that we can actually read this kind of content in a table format now. For those of you who teach tech writing, especially software manuals, often ends up being long, bulleted, and numbered lists. And because of that, the AI indicator 9 times out of 10 is not even going to bother to read it. If you get a 0, you're lucky, but more often than not, it simply won't read it. This should be something that catches your attention. The parameter I gave for this one was I wanted to do an essay question, so I have a numbered, not quite list, but it reads like it could be a list, and each of my responses was less than 300 words. Because there's a change in topic and there's no continuity between these features, unlike the research article, the AI indicator never met the threshold for 300 words minimum long form English prose. And so all it can do is give a 0 because it just doesn't have enough certainty, but it did try to read it. And sorry, I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, the resume experiment. I'm surprised that I actually got a 0 on this one. That means that the AI indicator did attempt to read it, but it recognizes this is not long form English prose. And software, I think that's all of them. So any questions on this?
We don't have any questions in the chat, but perhaps we'd like to pause while people think about what they've seen. Let's see.
Sorry, I know we went over time. That it goes so quickly. I apologize. The rest of this, These are just supplemental materials. This is an interactive PDF, which actually gives a nice overview of all of the different resources that we have at the Turnitin site, and that will be included for you. We also have our works cited. Those of you who've been to my past sessions, our past sessions know that our annotated bibliography, well, our bibliography, our works, our other materials that we provided were very, very extensive. Some of those are actually still really good to use. And so I only included a handful here because I don't necessarily want to kill you with resources this time around. So any questions at all? Any comments?
Nothing in the, oh, we do have one
Oops.
in the chat. Excuse me, just one second. Tori says, as ChatGPT next versions are introduced, is it conceivable that over time it will be impossible to distinguish the difference? In other words, will it begin to improve its output?
I think so. That's a great question, and what you're going to notice is that I would much rather speak with you all as I want to be spoken to. And so for my taste, yeah, it is absolutely conceivable. What I can tell you is what we're doing. Will it eventually pass a Turing test? Oh, I think so, actually. But Tori is asking a great question. What that has been my fear as well. And what I've observed over time, because a lot of the work that I do now is using the paid version of ChatGPT, and I'm also using Claude to try and play around with that. We've got parity with 4, and as long as we keep doing what we're doing, I believe that we will keep up. Now, do I think we're going to stay ahead of it every single instance coming up? That remains to be seen. So my case today with the instructor in New York, who had 3 examples of students who'd done work right in front of him. Now we think that it might be Microsoft Copilot that triggered the possible AI indicator. And so that means we need to test to it and isolate whether or not we can reproduce it and see if that might not be the cause of it. So it is possible that there will be things that become more and more difficult to distinguish over time. But I also think we're in an era, and I know you guys are leading the way as part of the Cal State system on really assessing your curriculum and the ways in which you're doing things, and that they're probably changing over time. It was one of your professors who first told us earlier this year that he had leaned in really hard on integrating ChatGPT into his curriculum. And Courtney and I were super excited, and we said, "Oh my God, what was it like? You know, what happened? And what did your students think?" And he said, "Well, they were kind of disappointed it wasn't cooler than it was." And that's an important piece of AI literacy that has to happen for students to learn where AI is strong, where it's not strong, how to work with it, how to use it to our advantage. But as the US Department of Education says, keeping humans in the loop is utterly important the whole entire way. And at Turnitin, we believe that is true as well. Would you say more about, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to read the same comment out. So it says, would you say more about the AI footnote mentioned earlier? What exactly is the editor recognizing, and what patterns does it see?
So this one starts to give above my pay grade in terms of the stuff that I can understand. The combination of the white paper and Eric Wang's podcast where he's interviewed, he actually talks about that statistical footprint. And it has to do with some things. You hear things like, oh God, what is the phrase, Courtney? Burstiness is one of the early phrases.
And perplexity.
Perplexity. There we go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So those are often cited as the guts of, you know, what people are looking at, but we're actually focused only on academic writing. And in as much as the large language models are effectively very, very fancy prediction tools, they're word prediction tools, our tool has been trained upon their base. And so we're looking at the statistical changes that they make as they revise, and we are revising right alongside them. Now, there's a certain amount of proprietary information related to that, and so even some of those details they don't share with us, but it's my hope if you review the white paper that it will give you more of those details, or the podcast. if you don't get answers to your liking, you're welcome to email me and I'll see what I can do to address your questions and get more information. But I know that it's almost like we're predicting what the predictor is predicting. And that sounds kind of crazy, and it is.
I think we have one more question, or is this a comment?
Okay, we're having percentages in the 30% range on some papers in which students are vehemently denying any ChatGPT usage or other AI-generated content program. Our instructors are meeting individually with students and getting a variety of responses, but the general ask has been for the student to edit the content to lower the percentages under 20%. Without an official policy on the use of AI, each professor is working with the best results as they can, and the student responses are influencing our actions. If you get to a point where you have examples where you've got students who can show you things like, I know that if students are working in Google Docs, for instance, they can show timestamps of the edits that they've made. And when I was in school, we were actually required to do that as part of our draft submission process. I had to turn in that information showing that I had been involved in the writing of my paper the entire time. Now I graduated in 2017, so this all predates ChatGPT, but it was a 100% online program. So what's interesting about that is I would love to know more. You're saying 30%, and the guy who talked to me today said 30%, which makes me wonder if your students are doing some of their editing work in Microsoft with Copilot. Now, I'm not trying to pick on it. Great product. I like to use it on the side, even though we're a Google shop. But if that's flagging, we would love to know what it is that students are using so that we can make sure that we take some time to test and tune to it, because we want to be helping your students. We don't want to be frightening your students, and neither do you. And kudos to you guys for taking the approach of trying to talk with the students to make sure that you understand their context as well.
And then the
Okay.
final comment, Leanne, was just thanking Turnitin for appreciating the do no harm approach, and thanking you for highlighting those edge cases of the AI indicator.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. If you have questions, please let us know. We invite all questions, even the difficult ones. I want the difficult questions. I also, when I look at some of these tools, there are things that I can't see in the way we can see with the Similarity Report. And so I ask our AI scientists the same questions. If Courtney and I both want to know that we can sleep at night, and the only way we can do that is by, posing difficult questions when they come up. So please don't be shy. They're all welcome.
Thank you so much, Leanne and Courtney. There's a lot of information to process, and I'm sure it's going to spur some great conversations afterwards. And we're going to be working with you guys to schedule another workshop next semester. So if you guys have any more questions, you can email or you can save them for our next one. And we will be sending out the slide deck and the recording a week after this.
Okay, thank you so much. Really
Okay.
appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.